Before Valentine's Day. It's February 13th, 2025. 2K spreading love in the seventh official NBA 2K25 2K ratings roster update. As always, I'm Pete Toll, aka PT Sports 84, bringing you all the latest official NBA 2K25 content. A lot to go through on this update. As everybody is aware, All Star Weekends this coming weekend. Friday is the Rising Stars game. Saturday's the 3-point contest, Shooting Stars, and the dunk contest. And then Sunday's the game. And then there's a couple days off for NBA players until play resumes Wednesday. I believe it's the Lakers and Hornets that day. Um, which is ironic since the Mark Williams and Dalton Connect trade fell through. But anyway, a lot to talk about in this update as far as teams go. Um, a lot of position changes in this update as well. So I'm going to try to dive into each of them the best I can. If I miss anybody on a smaller scale, please don't kill me in the comments. I'm basically doing it by hand based on what I had in my roster previously. So if I miss somebody by one or something like that, um, you know, shouldn't be a big deal. But I'm going to try to get all of the major players kind of out of the way and go from there. So just going to bring up my list. If you want to follow along with the written list, you can go to Operation Sports. You'll see the thread up there. It's the seventh official 2K25 player ratings update. You'll see the thread there. Make sure you're going there as well to see any changes to badges, kind of specific attribute changes, things like that. The Real 2K Insider has always been great about going behind in the thread and then, kind of cleaning up any data, giving more explanation on data as well. Meanwhile, go to the Real 2K rosters. John is really doing a great job of doing daily recaps on games, kind of what's changing in the 2K landscape. He has his own custom roster, his own Patreon as well. Not sure if the Patreon's back up or not, but once it is, make sure you're going to grab that. A lot of useful roster information in there that anybody that's wanting to know deeper dives on stuff roster related, you can find it there. All right, let's jump into it. Enough talking. So, first up, we have the Philadelphia 76ers here. Biggest thing that you'll notice right offhand, Paul George has switched to shooting guard. That drops his overall rating -1 to an 84 overall. Yerson Yabusele, who's kind of switching between power forward a little bit and then center when Embiid's not playing. He gets a +1 to an 80 overall. Big mover in this one, +3. Well, not really a big mover, but he moved enough. Justin Edwards, he's been starting at the 3. Kind of him and Quentin Grimes have been flip flopping there. He is +3 to a 75. Newly signed David Roddy to a 10-day contract gets a -1 to a 74. I think that's more to align the roster with guys that are playing versus guys that aren't playing, which I do like when 2K does do that. Adem Bona gets a +1 to a 73 overall. And then, quick housekeeping note, also on a 10-day contract is Shuma Okeke. Um, I'll be curious to see what the Sixers do really quickly with Jared Butler. I assume they'll convert him to a standard contract, so he'll take one of those spots. They'll look at David Roddy possibly um, as a player that could flip over to a two-way contract. He has a year left after this one, I believe, of eligibility for a two-way contract. So that's somebody that they may look at. They may also shift gears and bring in multiple players to see who they like on that. I advocate not to bring back Pete Nance on a two-way. I just don't think he's good enough quite yet to really be someone that the Sixers should look at, as a piece going forward. But that's just my opinion as a Sixers fan. Moving on, only one change for the Milwaukee Bucks. It is Bobby Portis Jr. going +1 to an 83 overall. Not really a lot to talk about with Milwaukee other than the injury sustained to Giannis that'll put him out of the All-Star game. He'll be back. He'll be fine for the second half of the season. It was more so, rest more than anything. One thing that I like here is they kept Bobby Portis at power forward because if he had shifted to center, the 83 overall would have started him over Brook Lopez. So he is going to start right now. Obviously, if you were just to do a quick My NBA, he would have started over Kyle Kuzma, but not a lot you can do because Kyle Kuzma has not been good enough to go up in the update. So next up, we got the Chicago Bulls. They got quite a bit on the agenda there for them. Nikola Vucevic drops -1 to an 85. He's not looked great. I think, he thought he was going to get dealt at the deadline. Maybe he can make peace with not being dealt. Maybe he'll get dealt in the offseason. Kobe White goes a +1 to an 83 overall. Same with Josh Giddey, +1 to an 81 overall. Ayu Dosunmu stays the same at a 78, but his position swaps to small forward. Then we have Jalen Smith, who's been playing well as a backup, +1 to a 78. Modest Bazelis has been starting at the power forward spot. He goes +2 to a 76 overall. A position change, no ratings change for Patrick Williams. He goes to small forward. Javon Carter gets a -1 drop to a 74. And Talen Horton Tucker, the same -1 to a 74. Moving over to the Cleveland Cavaliers. A couple changes for them as well. Donovan Mitchell gets a +1 to a 94. He looks like he's kind of back to form as he was at the beginning of the year. Newly minted small forward DeAndre Hunter gets a +1 bump to an 82. Max Strus has been playing well. I believe he got injured a game or two ago. +2 to a 79. Sam Merrill's back in the rotation, +1 to a 74. Jalen Tyson has played well in his, minimal playing time, +2 for him to a 74. He's now kind of in the rotation a little bit more, so good to see him go up. They did add some injuries. They still don't have Isaac Okoro injured. I don't understand why they're not injuring him. His shoulder has been bothering him for a while. They can also technically injure Max Strus as well, but I guess we're not doing injuries that thoroughly anymore. Going over to the Boston Celtics, 3 changes for them. Derek White gets a +1 bump to an 87. We get a -1 drop for Drew Holiday, who's really struggling right now, to an 84. Luke Cornett gets a +1 bump to a 78. And that's all of the changes for the Boston Celtics. Looking at the Los Angeles Clippers, right off the bat, you can see Kawhi Leonard drops. I believe Leonard's averaging like 17 a game. So that's, kind of right in line with his in and out play. So he goes -2 to an 88. We do get a +1 bump for Norman Powell to a 87. Derek Jones Jr. +1 to a 79. And then, oddly enough, Amir Coffey drops -1 to a 75. I thought either he could stay at a 76 or even possibly go up there, but, I guess 2K thought differently. Position change for Chris Dunn to point guard in this one, and that was all the changes for the Clippers. Moving over to the Memphis Grizzlies, Jaren Jackson Jr. cements himself as the top-rated player on the Grizzlies in 2K. He goes +2 to a 91 overall. A likewise -2 drop for Ja Morant to a 90 overall. They give a +1 bump to Zach Edey, who's played limited minutes, but he's played well in those minutes. And then no other changes across the roster as far as ratings go. They did change the position of Vince Williams to shooting guard. And that looks to be it for the Memphis Grizzlies. Moving on to the Atlanta Hawks. Trae Young named an all-star replacement. Other than that, we have Zachary Richache +2 to a 79 overall. Likewise, drop for Karis LeVert, -1 to a 79. He gets switched to shooting guard. Terrence Mann gets shifted over to small forward. No ratings change for him. Garrison Matthews, -2 to a 74. He's basically out of the rotation at the moment. And then Muhammad Gaye gets a +2, or actually a +1. Or no, it's +2. I just put the overall incorrect on my sheet, so I actually put him as a um, or as a 73 instead of a 72. I was thinking of Musa Diabate when I was typing his name in for whatever reason. But that's it for the Atlanta Hawks. It looks like I'm looking just to double check any position changes. Nope. We do have news for them though. Injuries to Larry Nance is going to put him basically a fractured kneecap. He's out 6 to 8 weeks, and then Vic Krejci is out probably about 3 weeks. He has a basically a fractured. I can't remember the terminology, but basically something in his back is fractured. So I would consider him out probably for a good while, more than just the 3 weeks, potentially. But let's go over to the Miami Heat. So interesting enough for the Heat, in the last game that they played, Duncan Robinson came off the bench. They started Hero at the 2 and Davion Mitchell at the 1. I wouldn't be shocked for defensive purposes if Hero shifts back full time to the 2. Davion Mitchell stays at the 1 if he can shoot it well enough on offense to at least be respectable. We'll see. I'm going to keep an eye on that change. 2K has not made that change yet. I guess they're keeping an eye on it as well. But Bam Adebayo, a +1 for them, 87 overall. Speaking of Duncan Robinson, he goes -1 to a 77. Kyle Anderson, likely probably not going to play a ton for the Heat, goes -1 to a 76. Pell Larson drops -1 to a 73. Out with personal reasons. I think they're going to end up buying out Kevin Love, honestly. We'll see what happens, but he should be out with personal reasons as an injury, but he's not at the moment. We'll see what happens with that Kevin Love situation. Charlotte Hornets, they've been a mess. They filed a grievance with the NBA to basically dispute the decision by the Lakers to say that Mark Williams was more heavily injured in different areas other than his back than stated by the Charlotte Hornets. Now, the NBA, according to Bobby Marks, will probably 99.9% side with the Lakers there. The reason being the Lakers can use their own doctors to examine and come up with their own diagnosis based on the trade, what they feel comfortable with. I think the Hornets' point of view is they don't want to look like they sent someone out that was damaged goods, because that's going to affect their trades moving forward. They do have a new ownership that does not want to have that stain on their record. So I think that's more so what they're doing than trying to get the trade pushed through. I don't believe that a trade could be pushed through just because in the past there was no trade vetoed or pushed through based on the commissioner's decision. A lot of people get confused that the Chris Paul to the Lakers trade, they don't remember that acting as basically the ownership governor for the Charlotte team at the time was or was it New Orleans? I can't remember. Charlotte, New Orleans. But it was New Orleans because it was Chris Paul going. So acting as that particular liaison, as the commissioner and as the governor, David Stern had the right to veto the general manager's proposal as a fellow ownership of, because the NBA owned the team. He had the right to veto that, not acting as the commissioner. So that's where people get confused with that. But Charlotte Hornets, they've had extensive injuries. LaMelo Ball is back out again. Doesn't seem like he can stay healthy for the long term. But Mark Williams, talking about him just a minute ago, he goes -1 to an 83, +1 for Miles Bridges to an 83. He's kind of been their scorer with guys in and out of the lineup. Yusuf Nurkic goes -1 to a 77. Musa Diabate goes +2 to a 76. He's kind of now the backup center, and Nurkic is starting. +3 for Nick Smith Jr. to a 76. So quite a boost for him. He's starting at the 2. Um, Elfrid Payton, for those that don't know, he actually started last night. He's on a hardship contract for the Hornets essentially right now. So good to see him back in the NBA. Hopefully we'll get a My NBA Eras update, and so he could be added to the Steph era officially at some point. We'll see what happens there. KJ Simpson has been playing as a backup point guard, +2 for him to a 72. Isaiah Wong plays the backup shooting guard spot. He actually got shifted to shooting guard in this one, +1 for him to a 71. His shooting splits have been awful, but I guess they saw enough, 2K did, to bump him the +1. Damian Baugh was signed to a two-way contract last night, and if you watched him, he went off. He played really well from the point guard spot as a backup off the bench. I believe he had like 15 or 16 points. He gets added. He's a 70 overall there. And then now looking at the Utah Jazz, I don't know what to make of the Jazz. They beat the Lakers last night. You know, it seems like some games they're tanking, some games they're not, but it is what it is, I guess. -1 for Lauri Markkanen to an 84 overall. Jordan Clarkson gets a +1 to an 81 overall. I'll be keeping an eye on Colin Sexton and that nasty ankle injury he had a couple games ago, kind of where he is if he comes back right away after the All-Star break. Keontae George +1 to a 79. He's been playing better as of late. Kyle Filipowski is manning the backup center position. He is switched to center in this one, +1 to a 77. Isaiah Collier is the starting point guard. He gets a bump +2 with some badge changes, so look out for John to go over those in the comment section on Operation Sports. He is a 76. Bryce Sensabaugh gets a drop -2 to a 75. He's kind of playing backup power forward right now. We'll see once KJ Martin can get, reconditioned if he gets in the rotation. Shafi Mikhailuk -1 to a 73 overall. Micah Potter +1 to a 71. He's also kind of playing some backup power forward minutes as well. Moving on, Sacramento Kings. Domantas Sabonis -1 to an 89 overall. His shooting percentages since January 29th have been down just a tad. That's likely why. Obviously, his scoring's been down. I believe he's averaging like 17, maybe, give or take, over that period. So that's why he drops, I presume. Zach LaVine drops -1 to an 86. He hasn't shot it that great since coming over. Jonas Valanciunas drops -2 to an 81. Keon Ellis drops -1 to a 78. Isaac Jones goes +1 to a 74. He's been manning the backup center spot before Valanciunas got there. And then Devin Carter goes +1 to a 72. Other big news, they get another point guard in Markelle Fultz. He looks like his knee's finally healthy again. He will help them kind of in the backup minutes at point guard. People keep saying that he's going to start at point guard. I don't see that happening. You can spell Monk. Monk can switch over to the 2 guard if needed. LaVine can always switch up to small forward and DeRozan to power forward once Murray comes out if they need to. LaRavia has been kind of hit or miss since coming over, but that's how he was in Memphis, even though he is playing better this year. New York Knicks, only one change for them really quickly. Precious Achiuwa, +1 to a 79. More importantly for them, they're going to have to get OG Anunoby healthy again and then look forward to seeing Mitchell Robinson come back at some point as well. The Los Angeles Lakers. They lost last night to the Utah Jazz, as I mentioned just a minute ago. So we get a position change for Austin Reeves to shooting guard, and he gets a +2 bump to an 85 overall. Rui Hachimura +1 bump to an 80 overall. Um, I don't know about this one, but +1 bump for Jared Vanderbilt to a 79. Gabe Vincent +3 bump to a 77 overall. Dalton Connect had 10 points off the bench last night. He doesn't seem to be taking the trade well. If I was him, I wouldn't take it well either, because now you're really not going to play a lot in the rotation because they have better players than they did previous. He would have played a lot in Charlotte, but we'll see what happens. Jackson Hayes, starting center, he went out with a facial injury last night. +2 for him, 76 overall. Shake Milton, +1 to a 75 overall. They also signed Alex Len. He played quite a bit last night. Also, two-way player in Jordan Goodwin is in the rotation. He should be there for defensive purposes only. He's not going to be there to score a ton, but I like his defensive potential. Moving over to the Orlando Magic. Paolo Banchero has really been struggling lately. He gets a -1 drop to an 88. Cole Anthony has been starting at point guard. He gets a +1 bump to a 79. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope has struggled over the last 2 weeks. He drops -1 to a 77. I would have liked to see likewise drops for Wendell Carter and then Jonathan Isaac, who have also been struggling a little bit, but we didn't get that in this update. Jet Howard drops -1 to a 73. Likewise for Trevelyan Queen. Queen had a nice little run there for a little while, but looks like he's not going to get much burn. He doesn't shoot it well, and that's really not going to help him moving forward. Moving over to the Dallas Mavericks, so we get some changes for them. Position change for Kyrie to point guard. I know it's going to make a lot of people in the comments happy that are watching this video. A lot of people view him as a point guard anyway, but now he's officially there. Major injuries to them. That's the storyline for the Dallas Mavericks. Anthony Davis, who knows how long he'll be out with the abductor strain and the groin potentially. Derek Lively's out already. Daniel Gafford suffered an injury. He's out about 2 to 3 weeks. And so that really puts a damper on things. Caleb Martin's out for 2 to 3 weeks as well. That puts a damper on their size. I wouldn't be shocked if they go get a center from the G League. It sounds crazy because they had him already, but Moses Brown would be perfect for this team, rebounding. Really would help them, kind of some shot blocking a little bit. Jamario Sharp would be another one that plays for their G League team. That's another one. He's got size, really tall, so he can shot block as well and rebound. That's kind of what they need. They have Kyler Kelly on a two-way contract. We'll see kind of what happens with that. Dwight Powell is actually out injured, so they don't have any big men right now. They've been starting Olivier, Maxine Prosper, and Kessler Edwards up front with Clay, Dante Exum, and then Kyrie. So that's kind of where they are with things. Let's go back into the rating side of things. +1 for Klay Thompson to a 79. A boost for Max Christie, who's been playing extremely well. +2 to a 79. Dante Exum to a +3, 78 overall. Gets position change to shooting guard as well, since he's starting there. Olivier Maxime Prosper, I mentioned just a minute ago, +2 to a 75. And then Kyler Kelly gets a +2 bump to a 70. Moving over to the Brooklyn Nets. So they're going to be in full tank mode kind of going forward. Position change for Cam Johnson to power forward. We get Day'Ron Sharp, a +1 to a 77 overall. Keon Johnson's played well recently, +2 to a 76. Jalen Wilson, position change to small forward, gets a bump +1. Trendon Watford goes -1 to a 74, but gets a secondary position change to point guard. If you've watched the Nets, He comes in and handles the ball, runs up the court quite a bit. He did that a lot in Portland, so it's translating over to Brooklyn as well. Um, and then Tosin of Bevmon goes to a plus 272 overall. He's playing the backup power forward minutes because Clowney is out with injury until after the All-Star break. They don't have him designated with injury either. Denver Nuggets. One change I would have liked to see them make is move Michael Porter Jr. back to small forward, but they didn't do that. He does go a plus 2, however, to 85 overall. Christian Brown goes plus 1 to an 83. Julian Strawther is back in the rotation playing well, plus 2 to a 77. DeAndre Jordan's rebounding well in limited minutes, goes plus 1 to a 75. And Zeke Nnaji's back in the rotation, plus 2 to a 73 overall. Indiana Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton, back to struggling a little bit with the shooting. He goes minus 1 to an 87. No injury designation for Miles Turner. I'm thinking Miles Turner dropped minus 1. Let me double check that. I think I missed him first go round. Miles Turner did drop minus 1. I just happened to notice that. Miles Turner drops from an 83 overall to an 81. He's out. I believe it was a neck injury that has sidelined him until after the All-Star break. So let me just add that in to the sheet here. So got that updated on Operation Sports. Sorry about that. Like I said, sometimes I just miss some players, and it happens. So, yep. So next up, Andrew Nembhard's played well as the starting shooting guard. He goes plus 1 to an 81. T.J. McConnell struggled shooting lately, minus 1 to an 80. Thomas Bryant has started in place of Miles Turner. He gets a plus 1 bump to a 76, while Ben Shepherd has played well in the rotation, plus 1 to a 75. Moving over to the New Orleans Pelicans, news came out that Herb Jones is officially out for the rest of the season. So we'll see what happens. Lots of offseason changes coming for them. I think we'll see Willie Green relieved of his head coaching duties. We might even see a trade of C.J. McCollum. We'll see. Looks like probably DeJounte Murray's out for a considerable amount of next season. We'll see kind of what route they go with transactions moving forward. But Trey Murphy III has played phenomenal all year. Plus 186 overall for him. Yves Missy has cooled off a little bit. He goes minus 1 to a 79. Who has been on fire lately in the rotation for them, though, is Karlo Matkovic. He goes plus 3 to a 74 overall. Looking really, really good. They needed injury designations for Kelly Olynyk, or a injury designation for him. He's not played yet for them. Bruce Brown made his debut last night in the rotation. You could argue that he's kind of more of a point guard, unless you look at Jordan Hawkins being able to play the backup point guard, but Hawkins doesn't pass, so I'd look at more like Bruce Brown being the backup point guard than anything else. Going over to the Detroit Pistons, we got some changes for them. Cade Cunningham gets a boost plus 1 to a 91 overall. Asar Thompson gets a boost plus 1 to an 80 overall. Tobias Harris has played well, plus 1 to an 80 overall. Dennis Schroeder, minus 2. He struggled really badly in Golden State and now in Detroit, minus 2 for him. And then Marcus Sasser, minus 1 for him to a 75 overall. Toronto Raptors, their big news, Brandon Ingram signs a 3-year extension, $40 million a year, 120 total, player option on the third season. Interesting enough, probably means that RJ Barrett gets traded in the offseason, I would assume, because I just don't like the fit of Ingram next to Barrett. Being able to space it a little more with shooting with Grady Dick would be a better outcome for them, but we'll see. Speaking of RJ Barrett, he goes minus 1 to an 83. Likewise, minus 183 for Jakob Poeltl. Jonathan Mogbo is the actual backup center right now. Unless you want to say that Boucher is the backup center, I'd lean more towards um, Mogbo just being the backup center, but maybe I'm looking at that data wrong. He goes +1 to a 76. We have Jacoby Walter going back up +2 to a 76. He's played well in the rotation. Jamal Sheed is played extremely well, gets a +2 bump to a 75 overall. Orlando Robinson in the rotation, kind of as a backup center as well, +1 to a 72 overall for him. PJ Tucker will eventually be waived. That was the rumor. And we'll probably see once he gets waived. We'll see what happens with the roster moving forward if they make another change. If PJ's waived, if they don't convert Ulrich Chomchi, um, then possibly they could bring on another veteran to kind of fill out the locker room, maybe, or fill out the roster to help the locker room. We'll see what happens. Or they could promote one of their G League guys. Jared Roden, maybe, could be a potential guy that comes on board. We'll see. Houston Rockets, an odd change I'll talk about in just a second. Alperen Sengun goes -1 to an 87. Um, we get a change to Men Thompson. He goes to small forward because technically he plays small forward as a backup to Dylan Brooks. Right now he's starting at the point guard spot for the injured Fred VanVleet. Obviously no injury designation for VanVleet, so you're not going to see that as he's still starting here. I guess 2K didn't notice that he was out. Um, Interesting enough, they make a change to Dylan Brooks to power forward. Now, why is that strange? Well, you got Dylan Brooks, Tari Eason, and then Jabari Smith Jr., who's coming back after the All-Star break at power forward. Brooks should be moved to small forward. You can keep Thompson there if you want, um, or you can move him to point guard. It's your preference, but that's where Brooks should be, back at small forward. I don't understand the change to power forward there, but it is what it is. Cam Whitmore changed to shooting guard. He goes a +1 or -1, or actually stays the same, excuse me, um, at a 79 overall. Whitmore kind of, to me, has some bad body language whenever you look at him on the court. It's odd because when the team's successful, he still kind of has a I just don't want to be here attitude, and so it's just odd behavior. But anyway, Steven Adams +1 to a 78, Jock Landale +1 to a 77, and that's it. Reed Shepard's getting some more minutes in the rotation, not really doing a lot. Doesn't really fit this team, honestly. Going over to the San Antonio Spurs. So we get some changes to them. Chris Paul gets a -1 drop to 82 overall. Meanwhile, Fox gets a position change to shooting guard, and Devin Vassell gets a change to small forward. Stephon Castles played extremely well coming off the bench, 81 overall, +1 for him. Julian Champagnie gets a -1 drop to a 75 overall. We get a position change for Keldon Johnson to power forward. What's odd, though, is that Jeremy Sohan is played backup center for the most part. He doesn't get a change. So they make the change to Johnson, Vassell, and Fox, but they missed Sohan's change as far as the rotation. Maybe they didn't want to disrupt the positions as is, but I don't know. Phoenix Suns, they've kind of had a weird lineup change. Well, not weird, but just a bigger lineup change lately. Their last game, they started Kevin Durant at small forward, so I'll keep an eye on that if it's not a permanent change, just for my own personal sake. But changes to them. Nick Richards goes -1 to a 79. He's not been as effective since his first game on the team. Tyus Jones has struggled lately, but no drop for him. Ryan Dunn -1 to a 76 overall, and then Bol Bol started the last game. He gets a +1 bump to a 6. So not a lot of changes for Phoenix. Don't know what they're going to do. I don't even know if they make the play-in at this. I mean, they'll probably make it as the play-in team, but that's pretty bad if you ask me. OKC Thunder, lots of changes for them. Position changes. Jalen Williams to small forward, Chet Holmgren to power forward. That was to make sure that Hartenstein is at center. Um, and then we get a position change for Aaron Wiggins to small forward. But looking at ratings changes, Lou Dort goes +1 to a 81. He also changed positions to shooting guard. Wiggins, who I just mentioned, goes to an 80 overall, +1 for him. Oddly enough, they haven't really played a lot as more recently, but both Jalen Williams and Kenrich Williams get a +1 bump to a 78. Ousmane Dieng gets a position change to center. And that's it for OKC. Moving on to Minnesota. Anthony Edwards has played extremely well over the last 2 weeks. +1 bump to a 94. Rudy Gobert, likewise for him, +1 bump to an 86. Jaden McDaniels, +2 to an 84 overall. Naz Reid, position change to power forward as his primary as he's starting there with Julius Randle out. +2 bump to an 83 overall. Nickeil Alexander-Walker has kind of found his place again in the rotation, +1 to a 78. And then Jalen Clark, finally healthy enough to play consistent minutes for them. He's a big mover in this entire update, goes +5 to a 73 overall. Moving on to the Portland Trailblazers. They missed, they basically, I think a lot of fans have missed that the Trailblazers were going on a run. It looks like maybe that's going to cool off now that DeAndre Ayton is out for multiple weeks. He did get a +1 bump to an 83 overall. Denny Advia gets a position change to shooting guard. He goes -2 to an 80. He's struggled more recently than how good he was playing in the past. Jeremy Grant is out injured right now, so technically Obvious slides up to small forward with Scoot and Simons starting in the backcourt. But once Grant's back, he'll probably regain that starting spot. Speaking of Scoot, he goes +1 to an 80 overall. And then Tumani Kamara gets a position change to power forward. He goes to a 78. If anybody plays fantasy, keep an eye on Donovan Clingan, especially the defensive numbers. Moving on to the Golden State Warriors. So we get some changes for them. Brandon Podziemski gets a +1 bump to a 79. A +1 bump for, -2 drop, for Trace Jackson Davis. And then -1 drop for Gary Payton II. Quentin Post gets the biggest mover, I believe, of the entire roster update. 77 overall, +6, and he gets badges added to him as well. So that'll be a cool breakdown to see what was there added there by the Real 2K Insider. He'll break that down, I'm sure, in the comments. Last but not least, we have the Washington Wizards. They actually have some changes here. Chris Middleton won't make his debut until after the All-Star break. He does get a -1 drop to an 82. That's based off of his play prior with Milwaukee, of course. Bilal Coulibaly, +1 to an 81 overall. Alex Sarris back healthy, came back last game. Corey Kispert, +1 for him to a 79. Malcolm Brogdon is hurt again. Pretty nasty ankle injury for him. He does go -2 to a 79. Bub Carrington gets a bump +2 to a 78. Good to see that. Julian Champagny, who I believe will get converted to a standard contract, gets a +1 bump to a 76. Rashawn Holmes has been starting lately, +1 bump to a 75. He's now in the backup role because Sarr came back, but Kaishan George gets a -2 drop to a 74 and a position change to power forward. He's been the starter there. And last but not least for this update, +3 to a 73 overall for Tristan Vucevic. They have Jalen Noel on a 10-day contract. I believe they'll rotate out guys on the 10 days and then see who they like to kind of keep maybe long term. If you like this video and all the analysis, make sure you hit the thumbs up button. Share this video across social media platforms. That really helps the algorithm getting eyes on the video as well as the thumbs up. Please also donate if you can. There's donation links to Cash App and PayPal in the description. If you like all the content, there's tons of custom content on my channel, as well as all the official content analysis for everything 2K. Even a dollar helps. Want to bring lots more custom content, but definitely could use the donations to help bring that to light. Last but not least, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I bring you all the official 2K content. Next week, we should get a player likeness update. Not sure what's going to be in it, but anything that we have that's updated faces, I'll have a video out on. Should have another custom roster coming on the next week or so as well. I'm not going to spoil that, but you'll see it when it comes out on the channel if you've subscribed. So, hope everybody has a great weekend. Enjoy All-Star Weekend. Quick predictions. I think Cam Johnson is going to take the three-point contest. I think Buddy Hield will be right there with him. That could be an intense shootout, I think. It could be way off, but we'll see. Shooting stars contest. I'll go Team Spurs. You know what? No, actually, I'm going to go Team Cavs. I'm going to go Mobley and Mitchell. I'm going to pick Mobley and Mitchell for the shooting stars competition. And the dunk contest, man, that's a toss-up. I think Mac McClung could get it again, which would be cool to see. Wouldn't be shocked to see Stephon Castle come out and get it. If he can dunk over Victor and get a really cool dunk over him, that would be something to see where he could technically take it home and win it. We'll see. Let me know your predictions for the All-Star Weekend, three-point contest, the dunk contest, and the shooting stars. Also, let me know in the comments if you thought somebody else should go up or down in this ratings update as well. Always like to see the kind of the feedback in the comments, so make sure you're doing that. Hope everybody has a safe weekend. Stay safe and take care.